On today's video, I'm going to give you guys another deer blind tour. Hey there, outdoor YouTubers. It's Dave Knetter from Knetter's Practical Outdoors. And you know, a while back I did a video on this one deer blind that I hunt at quite a bit. And that particular deer blind was pretty deep in a swamp, pretty difficult place to get to. And kind of the interesting thing about that deer blind was every wall was made into two sections. So you could kind of carry out one section under each arm, and you could kind of carry out each wall just under your arms. And I pieced it together out in the swamp, and like I say, that was a pretty difficult deer blind to get to. So the blind kind of had to be made that way. The roof took apart in sections. There's several things about it that were made to make it very easy to get out into the swamp, somewhere where a four-wheeler couldn't go, somewhere where obviously a truck couldn't go. Now, this particular deer blind, this is another deer blind that I hunt out of quite a bit. This particular area was a lot easier to access. I was able to get in here with a truck, and this blind was pre-made, but each wall was one section. But because I was able to drive a truck and a trailer right up to the spot, it wasn't very difficult at all to handle the walls pieced together as one section. Okay, and this deer blind is quite a bit bigger than the other one from that other video I did. This one is 6x6. Okay, I made it that size to accommodate two hunters. A lot of times maybe I'll sit with one of my kids, or one of my kids will sit with me, that sort of thing. So I wanted it big enough for that. But I just thought we'd go kind of around and inside of the deer blind, and I'll point a few things out to you that I like to do when I make a deer blind. Things that I think make things a little more stealthy, a little easier to hunt out of, that kind of thing. And I thought you guys might be interested to see a few of these things. Okay, to start off, here's the back of the blind. Here's the door. Obviously, that's how you get in and out of it. The floor was made out of 2x6s for the floor joists. And these 2x6s are actually up. I have a block in each corner. So this blind is actually up off the ground on cinder blocks, okay? So that's just going to help it to last a lot longer. You know, you're not going to get the wood rotting out as quick. And as you can see, I actually went 2 blocks high in the front because the terrain slopes down a little bit. And a couple other things you'll notice about the outside of this blind. One, I had some slabs that I attached here and there. And these slabs are more of a camouflage sort of thing. They really aren't intricate to the building of the blind. It just gives it a little bit of depth on the corners, you know, a little bit of 3D-ness to it, right? Flat surfaces are stick out in nature, right? So the more I can do to kind of take away some of the flat surfaces, the better. I expect to see the deer off the front of the blind, so this side really isn't done up much. The deer are mostly kind of down this hill a little bit that I see. Okay, so that's one thing. I got a few slabs, and we'll see some more in the front. And the blocks, like I say, it's up off the blocks. Another thing you'll notice is I actually have chicken wire coming around, and it kind of skirts the whole bottom of the blind. Okay, and that's mostly to keep critters out of there. Now, certainly a mouse can get in there. But in years past, I've actually had porcupines set up underneath of my deer blinds, especially these ones that are raised up off the ground, right? That's a perfect little porcupine home down there. So I actually, I do like to put the chicken wire around the bottom and kind of keep mostly the porcupines out, okay? And you'll also see I have kind of some chicken wire stretched out in front of it. It comes over to this tree, and that's not really to keep critters out. That's more for adding brush, you know, to camouflage the blind up. Giving it some of this chicken wire, it's real easy just to take different boughs and branches and just kind of stick it into the chicken wire, and kind of camouflage up. And like I say, that's mostly the front of the blind. Yeah, and here's the front of the blind. I've got a lot of, you know, trees and stuff, smaller trees over the years that I've cut and added to the front of it. Of course, I've got some slabs in the front to give it a little bit of depth. And you can see the chicken wire going across there, and I can add boughs to that real easy. Okay, I've got the windows. We'll get more into the windows when we get inside and some of the ways I utilize them. But anyways, this is the front of the blind. I've actually got a couple of fake Christmas trees over in this corner. As I acquire fake Christmas trees, like at a thrift store or something, I'll be adding more, you know, here and there. But like I say, having that chicken wire stretched across the front really makes for easy additions of boughs and small trees to kind of give it some depth, give it some camouflage. Seems to work pretty good. And then over here, chicken wire comes out around that birch and extends over, and again, just makes it nice and easy to add small trees and boughs to kind of camouflage it up. Alright, we've got the slanted roof. Of course, you know, you always want to have a slanted roof. You got to let the snow and the rain run off of it. And this roofing is actually like the granulated snow and ice guard. Works pretty good. It actually has the sticky side, you know, the one side is sticky. I did attach it with roofing nails along the edge. That kind of keeps it in place, and this excess acts as kind of a drip edge, you know, so the boards, the roofing boards themselves won't get moisture on them. And it's worked pretty good. But let's go ahead inside. Okay, first thing you might notice is I have one pretty decent chair in here. It's a real nice comfy chair for sitting a long time. We've got carpeting on the floor, okay, helps to insulate, keep the noise down. And also, if you'll notice, on the door here, the door is actually insulated with foil-faced insulation, okay? And you'll notice half of it's painted. Okay, it's kind of the same thing on the inside, right? All around the entire blind, we've got foil face insulation on every wall, on the ceiling, okay? And you'll notice it is painted black, okay? But not everywhere. I've really only got it painted black to give myself a background while I'm sitting in the blind. Basically, any kind of a deer that's looking up at this blind is only going to be able to see that black background. Okay? I don't want to be sitting in front of that light-colored insulation. I would stand out a lot more. So, like I said, the black paint is pretty much just where a deer might see if they were to be looking into the windows of the blind. Got the extra chair there, right? Like I said, I like to seat two people in here sometimes. I'll sit with a kid of mine, or a kid will sit with me. And here's another thing that I always add to these enclosed deer blinds is a vent. You always want to have some kind of a vent. You know, if you have the closed windows and a closed door, if you don't have a vent, you'll get moisture that'll stay inside the blind, and it'll kind of turn into mold and mildew if you don't get a little airflow in the off season. So I always have a vent because the rest of it is sealed up pretty tight. I do like to keep mice out of them if I can. There's Mr. Heater. These little buddy heaters work real good. They're actually very quiet. Not all heaters are quiet like these are. These are pretty quiet. I kind of made up my own base. It's a lot more sturdy than the ones that come with it. So, a lot less chance of it tipping over with that good sturdy base. They do have the automatic shut off if they tip, but, you know, I'd rather just avoid it entirely if I can. Okay, and we've got the plexiglass windows, okay? And the window on either side are permanent. They don't open up. I have curtains that I can close and open depending on how much light I want to get in here, or depending on how much I want to see. And of course, here's our shooting window. And this one opens up. right? It's got to be very quiet. That's important, right? Window needs to be very quiet if you're going to open it up when there's a deer around. And one thing you always keep in a blind, right? One of these jugs, okay? I'm sure you can figure that out. It's not apple juice. A couple spare propane cylinders. That's all good. And if you'll notice, I cut the foil face to size to fit into the different sections around the blind. And then I did fill in the gaps with spray foam, okay? And then what I did, I took these blocks and I ran a screw from the outside of the blind through the wall of the blind, through the foil face, and into this block. And the screws were just the right size where they wouldn't stick out through the block, but they would actually cinch these this foil-faced panels nice and tight against the walls of the blind. So I've got those little blocks every so often. And like I said, they really attach the foil face insulation nice and tight to the interior walls of the blind. So that works real good. And you know, I purposely didn't paint all the areas black. Okay? Like I told you before, I wanted to have the black background anywhere that a deer might be able to look up into these windows. I wanted to have the black background. They'd see the black background anytime they might look up this way. But the rest of it, I left intentionally not painted because that actually makes it a lot easier for me to see things inside of the blind, right? If I've got my drink on the ground, you know, I don't fumble around with a black background. I can actually see it in low light conditions, you know. I might build, you know, I might have a grunt tube or a can call in here. I want to be able to pick those things up off the floor real easy if I feel a need to use them. So having the nice light background lower like this, I can actually see around inside the blind pretty good in low light conditions. And if you'll notice this hook up here, this hook is where I like to hang the crossbow when I'm out here hunting. Okay? It's nice and out of the way. You know what I mean? It's not like I don't lean it against a wall where it can fall or something. I don't really prefer to have it on my lap the whole time when I'm hunting. And then, you know, like I say, all I'll do is if I see a deer, I can open this window up, quietly lift the crossbow off, and I've actually built kind of a crossbow shooting rest I incorporate into this window. I've got this kind of this notch right here, and the stirrup design on my crossbow kind of comes down somewhat, so I actually put that right in there, and then I've got a nice shooting rest when I'm using the crossbow. And again, this rest is for when I'm using my crossbow out of this blind. This is the rest that I actually put in place when I rifle hunt out of this blind. Okay? I'll actually unscrew this with the cordless drill, and then I'll screw this one in, and it sits something like that right there. And then I've got the nice rest for my rifle if I'm rifle hunting out of this blind. So that's kind of nice. I do like having a rest, you know. As long as I'm in a permanently built blind, I might as well give myself a nice shooting rest. And again, you like to have these windows very silent. When I'm crossbow hunting, I might be opening and closing that window with deer very close. I like to have the latch, okay, when I'm not here, I like to be able to latch this up. Keeps this window from blowing open and getting critters and leaves and moisture in here, that sort of thing. So that's all good. Alright guys, well there's a tour of one of my deer blinds. You know, maybe you saw some things that you'd like to incorporate into some of your deer blinds. A lot of the things I mentioned have worked pretty good for me over the years. But anyways guys, hey, remember to hunt, fish, laugh, repeat. This is Dave Knetter from Knetter's Practical Outdoors. Hey, thanks for watching and God bless.